Let me tell y'all a little story. Back in March 2015, when Bloodborne was being released on the PS4, I had little to no interest at the time. I'd only built my PC in December 2014 and was still enjoying all the titles that I'd wanted to play in 60 FPS for years, but had never had the hardware or the money to do so. It was also probably around this time that I was going through Dark Souls 1 for the first time like a total noob, not knowing how to kindle bonfires, treating humanity like health packs, and getting my shit handed to me by ONS over and over again, to the point when I actually quit playing Dark Souls altogether for a bit. I did not follow the Bloodborne hype at all during this time. I'd see some threads about it on anonymous Mongolian cartoon image boards from time to time, with half of the people lauding it as the second coming of Christ, while the other half were either very upset PC players who couldn't get the game or very upset PC players who didn't want Sony fans to have any fun at all. I was gleefully not part of either group, as I was yet to develop the hunger for Souls and insight that I have now. Skip forward a year, Dark Souls 3 is getting released. I finally finished Dark Souls 1 in anticipation, get Dark Souls 3, do the lore thing, blah blah blah, you know all that. But what was there to do once I conquered Anor Londo, journeyed to the Boreal Valley, and slogged and cried my way through fucking Black Gulch? Nah, don't worry, I actually like Dark Souls 2 now. Almost. Anyway, I wanted more, and when I had a bit of extra cash, I started investigating Bloodborne, or Bloodborne, as Paragon calls it, and I was intrigued. In a mighty Dark Souls-style platforming leap of faith, I bit the bullet and bought a PS4 with the intent of using it to play Bloodborne. It was quite a risk at the time, but if you take a peek at my channel, you can probably surmise that I don't regret that decision. I don't just like Bloodborne, I fucking love Bloodborne, as many of you do. The music is the best in the series, the bosses are the best in the series, the tight combat and the lore are all so perfectly put together that it's often very hard to pry yourself away from the screen sometimes. It's really enough to make a man sick. Let's have a look at what Bloodborne did for Sony. In the year of 2015, Sony sold approximately 17.1 million PS4s. In 6 months, Bloodborne reportedly sold 2 million copies on one console, and while Dark Souls 1 sold 2.3 million copies, it took them a year and a half to get this number, with combined sales across 3 separate consoles. I think when taking this into account, we can definitely say with some certainty that Bloodborne was a system seller, and Sony would have taken notice of this. In fact, Sony came out publicly regarding the success of Bloodborne and stated, "It did surprise us. We had expectations to do well. We looked at the Souls series as a frame of reference, and we thought we could do better than that. We did, and then some. Relative to some of our sister territories, we were being quite ambitious, but even that proved to be conservative." Fergal Gara, UK Sony Managing Director. Sony is known to respond when there are successes like this. Demon's Souls sold about 1.7 million copies in its lifetime, which probably gave Sony some confidence to stick with From Software as one of their best developers over time, which has led to both good and questionable things. We need to consider something before moving forward. Where do you draw the line on Souls content? What do you really want, and what's best for the series as a whole? Consider this, there have been franchises that have had their honourable names dragged a bit through the dirt, not by a lack of content, but by an overabundance of content. Let's have a look at one particular franchise, Resident Evil. Now, I know that a new game has just come out and people love it. I haven't played it myself yet, but I will soon. What I want you to think about is this. Does Resident Evil as a series, in today's world, garner respect from you, the consumer? To me, someone who played Resident Evil growing up and saw the peak of it and what it had to offer as the best, is a tentative maybe? Resident Evil has seen both the highest peaks of success and also the most embarrassing, greedy, cash-grabbing, laughably bad pits of misdirection and just flat-out confusion. It's because of things like Resident Evil 6, the Resident Evil movies, Operation Raccoon City, and Umbrella Corps that really makes Resident Evil a questionable franchise. The owners did not know when to draw the line. I fear the same thing could happen to FromSoft. Dark Souls 1 is great, and it's absolutely clear to me that Miyazaki wanted to move on to other things after completing production on it. Dark Souls 2 and 3 most likely happened, I would imagine, due to corporate and consumer pressure, though that's just a theory. As much as I love Dark Souls 3, I will be the first to admit that it does have problems and does not have the same heart as Dark Souls 1 had. The point between Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 is where we currently stand at the moment with Bloodborne. In Bloodborne, we have a masterfully constructed game because the passion, original idea, and studio support were so in sync with each other that it just worked. Let me ask you this. Would you rather take a risk and wait for a new IP, just like what Bloodborne was, or demand a sequel like Dark Souls 2? For me, I'd take Bloodborne every single time. Bloodborne doesn't just have a good fanbase and great gameplay, it has respect, because so far it has rejected the temptation to milk the game for more than it can provide. A mic drop is always more profound than an encore, because most of the time the band will have already put in all their effort into the main show. I guess my point is with all of this is the theme of Dark Souls as a whole. We are convinced throughout the game by many elements that relinking the flame over and over again to make the same decision and to clutch on to what you feel is right and the best choice is not always the best way to go about things. Occasionally, you need to let the fire fade, to let nature take its course, to let go once in a while. That's what I want From to do. Not to be governed by corporate interests, but rather to maintain their own creative integrity and build new visions that we haven't all just thought of yet, but, that's just my preference. You might want a Bloodborne 2 despite all this, which is fine, by the way. It's not like we have a controlling interest in Sony to change that, but still. Just wanted to get that out. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. This might be a good opportunity for me as well to shill the Discord server as well for this sort of conversation. A little while ago I opened a public Discord server for people to chat to me, but I haven't really been putting codes in on videos too much, and I feel like it needs to have some life breathed back into it. If you want to chat to me, I often pop in to talk to folks, so I'll add a permanent link in the description of this video and also the descriptions of my other Soulsborne videos so people can see. I'll also have my social media links in the description and can be reached through them as well. Anyway, that's all for today. Until next time.